All right, real talk. Did you get a switch to A or a switch to B? Now, you might not know that there's a difference, but there actually is, and one of them could have major problems. Some new Switch 2 owners are already finding hardware issues with their screens, with their controllers, and straight up broken systems altogether. So in this video, I'm going to break down exactly what's going down, the problems that are being found and faced when they pop up, and what you can do about it to determine if you've got a Switch to A or a Switch to B. All right, plus we're going to go over problems that aren't related to this whatsoever and can be fixed easily. So what's going on, everybody? It's Zach from SwitchForce. Hit that like button if you're enjoying this Switch 2 launch. I'm having such a blast. I just leveled up my experience again. I went floor, blankets, Kanutsugami, and Cyberpunk 2077, and then my battery died relatively quickly. But I did have an absolute blast, and I enjoyed it. Now, if you've got a Switch 2A, you're probably having a similar experience to me. There are some issues that people are having that don't make it a Switch 2B, and let me go over those first just so that you don't freak out. And so if you are having this issue, maybe you can fix it. Let me know in the comments down below what issues you've been having, if any, and if any of these sound familiar. And we got to do a tally, so make sure to let me know in the comments down below if you got a Switch 2A or a Switch 2B once you hear how to decipher and figure out what you got. Now, one thing that is a problem with certain Switch 2s is that the packaging ain't that great. Some people got a receipt stapled to their Switch 2, which isn't Nintendo's fault, it was actually GameStop's, but others are finding little scratches on their Switch 2 screen, as well as little like cardboardy bits. This is not a factory issue or a factory defect, this is just Nintendo's packaging isn't that great, and unfortunately the Switch 2 screen is just cozied up right to the top of the box, I'd argue too close. So that's not really an issue with the Switch itself, it's more like, dude, this box wasn't good and you kind of got unlucky. Some people are also reporting that out of the box, their Joy-Con won't charge, and a lot of this has to do with needing a firmware update. So while your Joy-Con are still alive, make sure to update your controllers if you feel like they won't charge, and usually there's a bug fix or a firmware update that just needs to be put on your specific Joy-Con. Not sure how it got missed or how that happened, but it does seem like it's a fix that's being easily remedied. Another one is this error code 21680002, an error has occurred. Please press the power button and restart the console. This is happening early on when setting up the system, but most users are reporting that once you reset the system once, it doesn't really come up again. Another issue that some people are having is hard freezes. Now, we'll see if these become more frequent as the days progress, but right now it does seem to be a rare random issue. Oops, I popped out of Mario Kart and tried to load the eShop and the console froze. Just hard reset it by holding that power button, reboot it, and everyone I've seen is reporting no more issues after the initial problem. Those are things that are just random that happen to electronic devices. But this next slate of problems, this is what would make you have a Switch 2B, and you might be in for some trouble. Okay, a Switch 2B could have a Joy-Con, just one of them, that won't charge all the way. We're seeing a bunch of reports come in that certain individuals got Switch 2s where even if they leave the Switch 2 docked, they leave the Switch 2 Joy-Con on, it's charging, it won't go past about 70 or 75%. This is kind of a problem and kind of something that we hope will go away. Now, some people are reporting that after a few days, it just kept charging and charging and then got where it needed to get, but we'll have to keep eyes on it to see because this doesn't seem like something that should be happening. It's understandable if they won't charge at all and you need a firmware fix, but if one of them will only go up to 70%, there's no toggle for that in the system. Like you can click on to have the Switch 2 console only charge 90% to preserve the battery. That ain't a thing with the Joy-Con 2. They're supposed to charge all the way, so watch out. Dead pixels are another problem that users are reporting with a number of different placements, completely random it seems, and dead pixels are unfortunate. I think dead pixel is a totally reasonable reason to return your Switch 2. As long as you can find another one, you shouldn't have to settle for a dead pixel. This definitely makes your Switch 2 a Switch 2B because it should not have a single blemish on that brand new screen, at least within the screen itself. If the box caused it, you know, that sucks, and maybe you can complain to your retailer and get it redone. But if it has a dead pixel, you absolutely are due a new Switch 2. Convert that thing to a Switch 2A, okay? I luckily got a Switch 2A, Mine has been perfect. I have not had a crash. I have not had an issue. I don't have a dead pixel. I don't have a scratch, a scrape, a Joy-Con charging problem, nothing. I got very lucky, and it does seem like majority of the consoles are Switch 2As. Like, let's be clear, this isn't plaguing everybody like the Xbox Ring of Death that ended up just affecting nearly every launch console. It feels like 99% of Switch 2s are probably in the right category and are probably functioning fine and making their owners very happy. But maybe you have this problem that's completely busted. This might even be a Switch 2C, because this guy's console is freaking the heck out. It will not work at all. We've got flickering, we've got strange behavior, buttons do not work, screen barely works, it's moving all around like crazy. This isn't Joy-Con drift, this is like console brain drift. I don't know what's going on, but it's absolutely freaking out, and that to me is just like a completely busted console. Similarly, a number of individuals have received a Switch 2 that when they turn it on, it doesn't have the software on it. It doesn't have the operating system. It's just in like developer mode. It's in factory mode. It's just stuck on a screen of words and random digits that don't make any sense and definitely don't let you play Mario Kart World. If you got one of these, I feel terrible for you, especially if your town is sold out. This is kind of unacceptable. It seems like clearly the firmware, the software, the OS, none of it loaded on properly. And so we're faced with a console that is basically a baby and never got the proper nutrition and care. There's nothing that you can do about this as far as I've seen. You will need to return this one. And it's, again, a super sucky issue. And I hope none of you have been plagued by this. I hope none of you have faced this one, because this would make me so mad. Like, it's one thing to turn it on and realize there's a dead pixel. Shoot, that's just like a factory error. This one is like, dude, they completely forgot to load it on there. Like, what were they doing? What were they thinking? How is this system completely inert and not even playable? Now, Joy-Con are definitely part of the Switch 2B conversation, and there's multiple issues that they're facing besides just the 70% charging problem. Some users are reporting that their Joy-Con are wobbly when connected to the system, and if you saw my unboxing, one of the biggest things I complimented the Joy-Con on was how they are anchored to that system. They're magnetically attached, and they don't really have much wiggle. Like, yes, if you can really zoom in, there's barely any, but it should not be something where you're seeing gaps between the Switch 2 and the Joy-Con. Certain users are reporting that one of their Joy-Con is much more wobbly and not as securely on as the other, and it's hard to tell if this is a Joy-Con 2 issue or a Switch 2 body issue. Like, is the connection not strong enough within the Joy-Con or within the console? What is the issue? Are the measurements slightly off within the controller or within the Switch 2 itself? And there's no real way to know until this issue becomes replicated more often. But regardless, this probably isn't one you're going to get a new Switch 2 for, although I would not blame you if you tried to talk to Nintendo customer service and say, dude, my Joy-Con is wobbly, and one of the best things about this system is supposed to be that the upgraded build quality feels pristine, it feels high-end, it feels cool, and a wobbly Joy-Con just ain't cool. Another issue some users are finding is that the Joy-Con 2 disconnect button, the eject button, is getting stuck. Now, personally, I don't necessarily categorize this as a Switch 2B issue. It could be, but I'm thinking it's more just like, you know what, that trigger needs to be used a few more times. That eject button needs to be pressed and depressed and kind of given like some lifeblood, right? You need to kind of just warm it up so that it is smooth. If it still ends up being stuck though, then yeah, that's a defect, and you definitely should not have that worthwhile to return. I'm sure there's other issues that people have found and problems that are being faced. If it's a game-specific issue, that's really not your Switch 2's fault. And if it's something about the online, the memory cards, the internet, the TV, that probably is a connection issue that needs to be worked out with your cables, with your TV, with your settings, with your router, with your Switch 2, but it's not actually like a Switch 2B problem where you have a defunct, bad, broken system. But there definitely are people out there with Switch 2Bs. Let me know in the comments down below if you got a Switch 2A or a Switch 2B. I'd love to know if any of you got stuck with one of these unlucky broken units. So let me know in the comments down below. Hopefully we see 99.9% A's. Hopefully we see all Switch A's in those comments. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back with more coverage soon. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. Thanks so much for watching. SwitchForce out.